Many people marvel at how so many brave men and women join the military every year. We look at these young people with a sense of awe and gratitude. We offer them thanks and maybe the occasional beer to show our appreciation for their sacrifice for freedom. If you ask many of them why they joined, they will either say it's because of a sense to serve or a need to fight for freedom.
I want to go to war to protect what I believe in, protect what I love.
More recently, many men and women are joining simply because the economy is so bad and there are no other options. And the rest are probably inundated with student loans and see this as a way of paying them back. Understanding what gets these young, bright people to sacrifice themselves for the greater good is a very important topic to understand on what it means and takes to be free. You cannot change the outside world to become free. You must change yourself to make the world free. I have studied the most powerful people throughout history. I know that there are few families that are trillionaires since they own the world's debt through the privately held central banks of the world. An intellectually honest look at history sees that most wars are fought because we enable cunning men that create the reason for war with the age-old problem-reaction solution.
Later, a meeting took place in the vice president's office. Quote, the subject was how to create a casus belli between Tehran and Washington, he said. What you're writing there is that Cheney, there was a meeting in the White House where Cheney presided over, looking to cook up the next war, a false war based on false intelligence.
My oldest son is a lawyer, and when I sent him the story before it was published, basically in a final form, just a day, and he wrote back and he said, you really buried the lead in this one, about casus belli. How many press are here? Anyway, there was a meeting among the items considered and rejected, which is why the New Yorker did not publish it on grounds that it wasn't accepted. One of the items was why not. There was a dozen ideas proffered how to trigger a war. The one that interested me the most was why don't we in our shipyard build 4 or 5 Iranian boats that look like Iranian PT boats, put Navy SEALs on them with a lot of arms, and the next time one of our boats goes through the Straits of Hormuz, start a shoot-up. Might cost some lives, and it was rejected because you can't have Americans killing Americans. But that's the level of stuff we were talking about, provocation.
I know the immense power that they wield, as that money flows through their political, industrial, military, and media assets.
I frankly think that crisis initiation is really tough. And it's very hard for me to see how the United States president can get us to war with Iran. Which leads me to conclude that if, in fact, compromise is not coming, that the traditional way of America gets to war is what would be best for U.S. interests. Some people might think that Mr. Roosevelt wanted to get us into World War II, as David mentioned. You may recall we had to wait for Pearl Harbor. Some people might think Mr. Wilson wanted to get us into World War I. You may recall he had to wait for the Lusitania episode. Some people might think that Mr. Johnson wanted to send troops to Vietnam. You may recall he had to wait for the Gulf of Tonkin episode. We didn't go to war with Spain until the until the Maine exploded. And may I point out that Mr. Lincoln did not feel he could call out the Federal Army until Fort Sumter was attacked, which is why he ordered the commander at Fort Sumter to do exactly that thing which the South Carolinians had said would cause an attack. So if, in fact, the Iranians aren't going to compromise, it would be best if somebody else started the war. One can combine other means of pressure with sanctions. I mentioned that explosion on August 17th. We could step up the pressure. I mean, look, people, Iranian submarines periodically go down. Someday one of them might not come up. Who would know why?
Despite this incredible power that they hold, there is a fatal flaw to this that they fear.
I'm deeply troubled that a very vague, emotionally stated, semi-theologically defined diagnosis of the central global menace is obscuring our national ability to comprehend the historically unprecedented challenge which is being posed in our time by a massive global political awakening, and thus is obstructing our ability to deal effectively with the global political turmoil that this awakening is generating.
If we stopped actively or passively supporting this system and refocused our power onto ourselves, we would literally see a world of difference. I am of the belief that we don't need to necessarily fight for freedom, we simply need to be free in our own lives. And that starts with our mind. Most of humanity is manipulated like lab rats by a constant stream of electronic stimulus specifically designed to produce a response. We are indoctrinated at a very early age in schools to respond to a bell like a factory and obey authority. Then there's the subtle subtext of school with all the social pressure for the individual to conform to the unthinking collective that seeks to dominate the direction of our lives. This indoctrination is a two-step thought process of stimulus and response, and it is like some kind of primal urge or animal instinct. Since humanity is driven by this thought, that is why humanity has been stuck in this centuries-long cycle of debt and death. The criminal elite maintain power throughout history by creating a problem, waiting for the inevitable Pavlovian response from the masses, and then offering a predetermined solution that they planned long before they even created the problem. This problem-reaction solution of the Hegelian dialectic has allowed power to concentrate and empower the worst in humanity. While the faces and races of the rulers have changed throughout history, the formula is still the same. A psychopathic group of men concentrate power by either force or consent of the masses that would just rather be left alone. These criminals throughout history have used debt to enslave their own people and death to all people who oppose their power. The truth is, they do not control us. We actively or passively support them. Between stimulus and response there is a space. That space is your freedom. Viktor Frankl. The trivium of grammar, logic, and rhetoric breaks this two-step thought process that is used to manipulate humanity. The space between stimulus and response is logic. Logic to ask questions like, why am I being presented this information? To whose benefit? Is this information correct? What is the most likely outcome of this scenario? And how can I best position myself for it? It is questions like this that frees the individual from the manipulation and what makes man truly free.
Adios!
The most potent weapon of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. Stephen Biko. These criminals have known long ago that we outnumber them. Like a schoolyard bully, they use brute force, holy guilt, or financial slavery to have all these millions of individuals self-regulate into this unnatural order. They fear the day that these millions of individuals break this manipulation by using logic to see that without us, they are nothing. The host can live without cancer, but the cancer cannot live without the host. When I joined the Marine Corps Infantry in 1996, I had recently graduated Boston College and had a multi-million-dollar family business waiting for me when I got home. But something very powerful was drawing me to join the military. While most have no financial choice or have social pressure to join, I did not. Something very powerful drove me to joining, and when I committed to that contract, I really didn't put much thought into it. I now see what made me sign that Marine contract was 22 years of subtle programming that made me willingly sacrifice myself to the military-industrial complex. From a very young age, I was exposed to the tribalism of being an American. I was told that we were right and just. We were the good guys. Everything from G.I. Joe to A Few Good Men spoke to me that in order to be a man, I had to go fight in the military.
Want the truth? You can't handle the truth!
There was one particular commercial of a Marine slaying a dragon that really motivated me. It is crazy to think that a dragon in this day and age would be such a powerful tool. And yet all little boys want to slay a dragon and become a hero. Thanks to men like Edward Bernays, the cunning men that made this commercial know that the natural angst and uncertainty of young men can be represented by a dragon. By joining the Marines, you will slay your own personal dragons, whatever it may be. Bullied in school? Join the Marines. Girlfriend dumped you? Join the Marines. Need a job? Join the Marines. The pressure became even more intense after 9/11, when I stayed beyond my contract to have the opportunity to seek revenge. My Marine Infantry unit was the first reserve unit activated after 9/11. My fellow Marines were cops, firefighters, and small business owners from all over the New York, New Jersey area. I remember my own bloodthirsty Pavlovian response for revenge and the blind rage I felt. It was not until many years after I left the Marines did I start to logically look at what I had exposed myself to. When I watched the evidence on World Trade Center 7 and realized that 9/11 was a false flag, I shuddered at what I had almost done. I could have killed or been killed for a lie. And what was worse, that there were men that created, perpetuated, and profited off of this for generations. When I saw that there were many false flags and rigged market crashes, I saw the evil nature of this debt and death paradigm that we revolve in. We are constantly emotionally driven to worry about things outside of our control, and this makes us feel helpless and need to beg at the feet of power brokers that actually created the problem. I resolved to find a better way for humanity to break this debt and death cycle so that we could throw off these psychopathic predators once and for all. When you truly understand that they do not control us and it is we that empower them, we really don't need to worry about those that profit off the debt and death paradigm. We simply need to speak logic to those that actively or passively support it in their everyday actions. You could cut off the head of the hydra of the banking and political puppets that they dangle in front of us, and many more will reappear. You can try to rally the public into some collective solution like political activism, million-man marches, but you will learn that at the top of any organization, no matter how pure the intentions are, the corrupt will seek power, and they will infiltrate, subvert, and destroy any movement. Leaderless resistance is individuals taking control of their minds, to refocus the power that we actively or passively give away every day to the collectives, and consciously refocus that energy on the only thing that we can control in this world, you. You stop spinning in the anger, bargaining, and depression stages of the awakening, and you come to the level of acceptance where you see the true nature of the problems we are dealing with in the world, and focused on taking positive, productive action in your world. The silver bullet and silver shield is the idea that we can produce tremendous change not by fighting them, but by withdrawing our active or passive consent and collapsing their Ponzi scheme, by withdrawing our capital and refocusing our power away from them, and empowering ourselves with real friends, real skills, and real assets. In order to defeat this collective tyranny, I saw that we did not need to fight the beast, we simply needed to starve it. Without young men joining the military, there would be no one to pull the trigger. Without people gambling in their rigged markets, there would be no one to execute the trades. Without people sacrificing themselves to the altar of consumerism, there would be no debt slaves. Let them march all they want, so long as they pay their taxes. General Alexander Haig. I had the honor of meeting Ron Paul in his office last summer before the Republican convention, and I told him that if he wanted to make historically significant change, he should encourage people away from collective actions and back to individual independence of this doomed debt and death paradigm. Instead of 1 million men marching for a day with goofy signs, 1 million men should gain their ability for critical and logical thinking. Instead of money bombs, they should be withdrawing their capital from the banking system and buying real tangible assets or even paying off debts. Instead of rallying around another messiah to save them, they should seek the savior that's inside of them. By failing to prepare, you are preparing to fail. While starving the beast would certainly be enough to bring down this bloated, corrupt, cancerous, unsustainable system, but that is not good enough for me. You need to build something better. You first need to shield yourself from the anger phase of humanity that will surely follow this single largest event in human history. You will need real friends, real skills, and real assets. That should be enough for you to survive the anger phase, but in order to permanently break this debt and death cycle, we need to establish something better to show humanity that we can thrive without collectivism and debt. At the end of the Silver Bullet, Silver Shield video series, I described the ultimate exit strategy, where we see the collapse of the dollar will trigger the single largest transfer of wealth from debt-based counterparty risk assets, like stocks, bonds, and real estate, to real tangible assets. I made the case that besides food and energy, silver will be the main beneficiary of this mathematically inevitable collapse. This, I believe, will provide those that consciously walked away from the debt and death paradigm the real capital to establish a society that resonates and empowers us. While the rest of the world is trying to come to terms with the collapse, or trying to reinvent the collectivist wheel, we will be aware and prepared to provide logical, independent solutions for a world that is in desperate need of them.